Mom, you're going to rot in here, you miserable woman. Those were the last words my daughter Christina said to me before abandoning me in a nursing home on my 67th birthday. Hello, my name is Elizabeth, and if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the Elderly Stories channel and take a moment to tell me where you're listening from. It was a sunny Tuesday in March of 2024, and I had woken up with my heart full of anticipation. After all, it's not every day that a person turns 67, right? I had baked a simple lemon pound cake, my favorite, and set the dining room table with the embroidered tablecloth my mother left me. I placed the flowers I cut from the garden in an antique vase and waited. I waited for my only daughter Christina to arrive so we could celebrate together. What I didn't imagine was that she would indeed come, but not to wish me well. When the doorbell rang at 2 p.m, I ran to the door with a smile on my face. I opened it expecting a hug, maybe some flowers, or even a simple "Happy birthday, Mom." But what I found was Christina accompanied by her husband Jason, both with serious expressions, and a black folder under his arm. My daughter was different cold, with a look I had never seen before in all those 42 years since I brought her into the world. "Mom, we need to talk," Christina said without even coming inside. "You're not going to live in this house anymore." The words came out of her mouth like knives. There was no hello, there was no happy birthday, nothing. Just that cold, calculated statement. Jason stayed behind her looking at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. I felt the world stop. "What did you say, dear?" I managed to articulate, though my voice came out trembling. "What are you talking about?" Christina entered the house, pushing me gently to the side, as if I were an obstacle in her path. She opened the black folder on the dining room table exactly where I had placed my mother's embroidered tablecloth and the garden flowers. "We've made a decision," she continued in a mechanical voice. "You're getting old forgetful. The other day you left the oven on last week. You fell in the bathroom. You can't keep living alone." My mind was racing, trying to remember those incidents she mentioned. The oven being left on never happened. The fall in the bathroom never happened. They were lies. Elaborate lies to justify something I still didn't fully understand, but which was beginning to take shape in my mind. "Christina, I didn't leave any oven on, and I didn't fall in any bathroom. What is really going on here?" I asked, feeling the anguish rising in my throat. "Mom, don't argue," she interrupted with an impatient gesture. "It's already decided. We're putting you in the St. Joseph's residence. It's a nice clean place with nurses 24 hours a day. You'll be better cared for there." I looked at the papers she had spread on my table. Admission forms, medical authorizations, legal documents. Everything was already prepared. Everything was already decided without anyone consulting me. It was my birthday, and my own daughter had come to rip me from my home. "But honey, this is my house," I protested, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "I lived here with your father. We raised you here. All my memories are here. You can't just take me out like this." Christina sighed as if she were dealing with a capricious child. "Mom, this house is too big for you alone. The garden needs maintenance. The stairs are dangerous. The expenses are high. The best thing is for us to sell it, and with that money, we can pay for the nursing home and other things." There it was, the truth finally coming to light. It wasn't about my well-being or my safety. It was about my house. This property downtown, worth about $480,000 in the current market. This house that my late husband Anthony and I bought 40 years ago when it was worth almost nothing. But over the years and with the neighborhood's development, it had become a small fortune. Christina wasn't worried about me. She was worried about getting her hands on my assets. "I'm not selling my house, Christina," I said, with what little firmness I could gather. "And I'm not going to any nursing home. This is my house, and I have every right to live here." My daughter's expression changed instantly. The mask of motherly concern disappeared, and in its place, something dark appeared, something that scared me deeply. "You're not in a position to decide, Mom," she said in a chilling voice. "The van will be here in an hour to take you. It's all arranged." 1 hour. They were giving me 1 hour to say goodbye to my life, my home, everything I knew. I looked around my living room, the photographs on the walls documenting a lifetime, the furniture Anthony and I had chosen together, the sofa where I had breastfed Christina as a baby. All of it was about to be snatched away from me. "You can't do this," I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew it was useless. Christina had already made her decision. During that following hour, I tried to reason with her, to make her see sense, to remind her of all the years I had worked to give her a good life. I reminded her how I stayed up late into the night sewing dresses for the neighbors after Anthony died 20 years ago, how I saved every dollar so she could go to college, how I sold my own jewelry when she needed money for her wedding to Jason. But none of that mattered now. Her eyes only saw the house and the money it represented. When the white van arrived with the St. Joseph's Residence logo on the side, I knew I had no more options. I didn't have the strength to fight physically, and the tears no longer even allowed me to speak correctly. I packed a small suitcase with the essentials, some clothes photographs, some personal documents. My hands trembled as I folded each garment as I packed each memory into that limited space, a whole life reduced to one suitcase. At the door just before they put me in the van, Christina leaned in and whispered those words in my ear. I will never forget. "Mom, you're going to rot in here, you miserable woman." She said it so softly that Jason and the driver couldn't hear. But I did. Every syllable was engraved on my soul like a branding iron. My own daughter, the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, whom I had fed from my breast, whom I had comforted during countless nights, was wishing me dead in the cruelest way possible. But in that moment, instead of completely collapsing, something strange happened. I felt a smile forming on my lips, a small but real smile. Because I knew something that Christina didn't know, something that would change the entire game board in exactly 3 days. My younger sister, my dear Dorothy, had passed away last month in Chicago after a long illness. Dorothy never married, never had children, but she did have an extraordinary life as a successful businesswoman in real estate. 3 weeks ago, I had received a call from Michael, the lawyer who handled Dorothy's affairs. "Mrs. Elizabeth," he had said in a solemn voice, "your sister named you as the sole heir to her entire estate. We need to meet to formalize the documents." At first, I didn't understand the magnitude of what that meant. Dorothy had always lived simply in a modest apartment driving an old car. She never bragged about money or material possessions. But when Michael showed me the documents, I almost fainted in his office. My sister had accumulated an impressive fortune. $16 million between commercial properties, stock market investments, savings accounts, and government bonds. $16 million, an amount I couldn't even fully comprehend. Dorothy had invested wisely for 40 years, buying properties at opportune times and selling them when the market was high. She had been a brilliant businesswoman who kept a low profile all her life. "The final documents will be ready for signing in a week," Michael had explained. "Once you sign, the money will be transferred to your accounts in approximately 3 business days." I did some quick math in my head. The meeting with Michael was scheduled for the following Thursday, 3 days after my birthday. That meant that exactly 3 days after Christina abandoned me in the nursing home, I would become a woman with $16 million. I decided not to tell anyone about the inheritance, not Christina, nor my 2 grandchildren, Luke and Chloe. I wanted to see how my family would behave without the influence of money. I wanted to know if Christina loved me for who I was, or just saw me as a source of resources. And now, sitting in that van on the way to the nursing home while my daughter and her husband stayed in my house, probably already planning how to empty it and sell it, I had my answer. A painful but clear answer. The journey to the St. Joseph's Residence took about 30 minutes. I looked out the window, watching my neighborhood, my familiar streets, my entire life drifting further and further away. The driver, an older man with gray hair, tried to make conversation, but I couldn't respond. The words were stuck in my throat, along with the knot of pain and betrayal I felt. When we arrived, the building was exactly as Christina had described it. Clean, modern, with well-kept gardens. But no architectural beauty could compensate for the fact that I was there against my will. A young nurse named Martha greeted me at the reception with a professional smile. They showed me my room, a small but tidy space with a single bed, a wardrobe, a chair, and a window overlooking the garden. "You'll be comfortable here, Mrs. Elizabeth," Martha said with genuine kindness. "If you need anything, just press the call button." I nodded wordlessly, looking at that space that would now be my world. 4 white walls replacing an entire house full of memories and life. That first night in the nursing home was the longest of my life. I lay in that strange bed between sheets that smelled like hospital disinfectant and cried silently. I cried for the daughter I had lost, for the betrayal I had suffered for the 67 years I had lived to reach this moment of total abandonment. But among the tears there was another emotion growing in my chest: determination. Christina thought she had defeated me, that she had left me vulnerable and without options. But in 3 days, everything would change. And as I closed my eyes that night, heartbroken, but with my mind becoming clearer, I knew this story was just beginning. The first rays of dawn were streaming through the window of my room at St. Joseph's residence when I woke up that Wednesday. I had barely slept a few hours. My mind was constantly replaying every detail of what had happened the day before. I stared at the white ceiling, so different from my bedroom ceiling at home, where there was an antique lamp that Anthony installed decades ago. Every little detail reminded me that I was no longer in my home, that my own flesh and blood had torn me from it. I got up slowly and walked to the shared bathroom at the end of the hall. Other residents were already awake, some walking with the help of canes, others sitting in wheelchairs. They all had that same look of resignation, as if they had accepted that this would be their final destination. But I was not like them. I had a secret that burned in my chest like a flame of hope and justice. In 2 more days, my life would change completely. After breakfast, which consisted of watery coffee and dry toast, I returned to my room and took my cell phone out of my suitcase. Thank God Christina hadn't thought to take it from me. She probably assumed a 67-year-old woman wouldn't know how to use it for anything important. How wrong she was. I searched my contacts for the number of Michael, my sister Dorothy's lawyer. I needed to confirm that everything was still on track, that in 2 days I would have access to those $16 million that would change everything. "Mrs. Elizabeth, good morning," Michael answered with his professional and cordial voice. "I was just about to call you today. We have the meeting scheduled for tomorrow, Thursday at 10 in the morning in my office to sign the final inheritance documents." I explained my situation, that I was now confined to a nursing home against my will, that my daughter had taken advantage of my supposed vulnerability to lock me up here. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Elizabeth, this is very serious," Michael said finally. "But legally you are not incapacitated. You can leave that place whenever you wish. Tomorrow I will send a car to pick you up for the meeting, and after signing the documents we will have to take legal measures to protect your interests." I asked him to maintain absolute discretion about the inheritance. I didn't want Christina to find out yet. I wanted to see how far she was capable of going. I wanted to document every step of her betrayal before revealing my new financial reality. After hanging up with Michael, I sat on the bed thinking about all the years I had dedicated to raising Christina. I remembered when she was a little girl with blonde curls and bright eyes, when she would hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. I remembered the night she got sick and I stayed up by her side putting cold cloths on her forehead when she had a fever, comforting her when she had nightmares. I remembered her college graduation, how I cried with pride watching her receive her diploma. But I also remembered other things that I ignored or justified at the time. I remembered how at 16 she screamed at me that she hated our modest house, that all her friends lived in better places. I remembered how at 20 she demanded that I buy her a new car, threatening not to visit me again if I didn't. I remembered how at her wedding to Jason, 15 years ago, she barely thanked me for paying for half of the celebration, for which I had to sell the last of my mother's jewelry. The signs were always there, I just didn't want to see them. Or maybe I did see them, but I excused them, thinking it was my fault that I hadn't given her enough, that as a mother I had to sacrifice more. Now, sitting in that nursing home room, I realized that I had raised a selfish and manipulative daughter, and worst of all, part of the responsibility was mine for never setting clear boundaries, for never telling her no, for always prioritizing her desires over my own dignity. Around noon, one of the nurses knocked on my door. "Mrs. Elizabeth, you have a call at the reception. It's your daughter." My heart immediately sped up. I went downstairs to the reception where they handed me the landline phone. "Mom, it's me," Christina said in a neutral voice with no trace of guilt or remorse. "I'm just calling to let you know that we've started moving some things out of the house. We need space to store our belongings while the sale is being finalized." My blood boiled. Barely a day had passed since she abandoned me here, and she was already emptying my home. "Christina, those things are mine," I managed to say, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "You have no right to touch anything." She sighed impatiently. "Mom, don't start with the drama. It's just old furniture. Besides, we need to sell the house quickly. Jason found an interested buyer who can pay in cash. In a couple of weeks, everything will be settled." A couple of weeks. She was giving me a couple of weeks before completely getting rid of my life, my past everything Anthony and I built together. "We'll see what happens in a couple of weeks," I said with a calmness that surprised even me. Christina must have noticed something strange in my tone, because there was a brief pause before she answered. "What do you mean by that?" she asked suspiciously. "Nothing, dear, just that life has a funny way of turning out." And I hung up before she could reply. That afternoon, while the other residents watched television in the common room, I sat in the garden with a notebook I had found in the room. I started making a list of everything I needed to do once I had access to Dorothy's inheritance. First, immediately revoke the power of attorney I had granted Christina 5 years ago when I thought it would be useful to have someone who could handle banking matters if I got sick. That power of attorney gave her access to my accounts and documents. I had to cancel it immediately. Second, block all credit cards linked to my main account. Christina had an additional card that I paid for, which she used freely for her expenses. If she was really going to learn a lesson, she needed to experience what it meant to support herself financially. Third, contact a trusted real estate agent to put my house up for sale myself before Christina could make any legal moves. Although the property was in my name, I didn't underestimate her ability to create problems. Fourth, and most importantly, I needed to draft a new will. The current one, made 10 years ago, left everything to Christina as my sole heir. But after what she had done, after abandoning me on my own birthday with those cruel words, she no longer deserved a single dollar of my estate. I would decide calmly who to leave those $16 million plus the value of my house to. Maybe to charities that truly helped elderly people in vulnerable situations. Maybe create a foundation in Dorothy's name. As I wrote in that notebook, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. For decades, I had felt small, dependent, always trying to please Christina to keep her affection. But now, with this unexpected inheritance, the tables had turned completely. I was in control. I had the resources, I had the ability to decide my own future without depending on anyone. It was an intoxicating and terrifying feeling at the same time. That evening, while I was having dinner in the nursing home dining room with other residents, I observed their tired faces and slow movements. Many of them had probably also been abandoned by their families, left here for others to take care of, while their sons and daughters lived their lives without the burden of elderly parents. I wondered how many of them had daughters like Christina, how many were betrayed by the same blood they once cared for and protected with absolute devotion. An elderly woman sitting next to me named Rose asked me how long I had been there. "It's my second day," I answered honestly. She nodded with understanding. "The first few days are the hardest, but you get used to it. I've been here for 3 years." 3 years. I couldn't imagine being locked in this place for 3 years. Rose must have read my expression because she added, "My son comes to visit me every month. He's a good boy, he just lives far away and has a lot of work." But I had heard that story before. The children who live far away, who have a lot of work, who promise to visit soon but never do. The excuses that mothers and fathers accept because it's easier to believe a white lie than to face the painful truth of abandonment. I didn't judge Rose for clinging to that narrative. It was probably the only thing keeping her sane in this place. But I wasn't going to be like her. I wasn't going to stay here accepting crumbs of affection from a daughter who had discarded me. Later, back in my room, I received a text message from my grandson Luke. Grandma told me you're in a nursing home because you fell and need care. Are you okay?" My heart clenched. Christina had lied to her own children about what she had done. Luke was 15, old enough to understand the truth, but his sister Chloe was only 12. I didn't want to involve the children in this yet. I simply replied, "I'm fine, sweetie. Don't worry about Grandma." The truth was, I missed my grandchildren terribly. Luke with his passion for football and his endless questions about what life was like when I was young. Chloe with her love for reading and her spontaneous hugs. They were innocent in all of this. They were not to blame for having a manipulative mother. I promised myself that when this was all over, when I had resolved the situation with Christina, I would find a way to maintain a relationship with Luke and Chloe. They deserved to have their grandmother in their lives. That night before sleeping, I took an old photograph from my suitcase that I always carried with me. It was of my sister Dorothy and me when we were young, probably about 20 years ago. We were on a beach in Chicago, smiling at the camera with the sea behind us. Dorothy had that spark in her eyes that always characterized her, that spark of intelligence and determination. "Thank you, little sister," I whispered, looking at the photo. "Thank you for giving me this chance to get my dignity back." Dorothy was always the stronger of the two. While I got married young and dedicated my life to my family, she pursued her business dreams with admirable ferocity. She never apologized for putting her career first. She never allowed anyone to make her feel less for not following the traditional path of marriage and children. And now, even after her death, she was still taking care of me. She was still giving me the tools to fight for myself. It was her last gift, and I would not waste it. Thursday dawned with a gray sky and the threat of rain. I dressed carefully, putting on the best dress I had packed in my suitcase and the pearl necklace Anthony gave me on our 20th anniversary. If I was going to sign documents that would make me a multimillionaire, at least I would do it with dignity. At 9:30 in the morning, just as he had promised, a black car sent by Michael arrived at the entrance of the St. Joseph's residence. The driver, a young and polite man, opened the back door for me. "Good morning, Mrs. Elizabeth. Mr. Michael sent me to pick you up." I got into the vehicle feeling strangely important. During the 40-minute drive to the downtown area, where the lawyer's office was, I looked out the window at the city that had been my home for decades. Soon, I would have the financial power to do whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted. Freedom was just a signature away. Michael's office occupied the third floor of an elegant building right downtown. His secretary greeted me kindly and offered me coffee while I waited. A few minutes later, Michael came out of his office with a professional smile and invited me in. For the next 2 hours, we reviewed every document related to Dorothy's inheritance: commercial properties in Chicago, my city, and New York, bank accounts in 3 different banks, stock market investments, and government bonds, everything totaling $16,300,000 exactly. "Once you sign these documents, Mrs. Elizabeth, the transfer process will begin immediately," Michael explained. "In approximately 3 business days, everything will be in your name and available." 3 business days. That meant that by the following Monday, I would officially be a rich woman. I signed each document with a trembling hand, aware that each signature irrevocably changed my future. When we finished, Michael took another folder from his desk. "Now let's talk about the legal measures we need to take to protect you." I explained the situation in detail. The power of attorney given to Christina, the additional credit cards, the threat of selling my house. Michael took meticulous notes, his expression growing more and more serious. "The first thing we'll do today is revoke that power of attorney," he said firmly. "Then we'll contact your bank to block all cards linked to your account except for your personal one. And regarding the house, since it's in your name, no one can sell it without your consent. But I do recommend that we change the locks immediately." Before leaving his office, I asked Michael for one more thing. "I need to draft a new will, one that completely excludes my daughter." Michael looked at me with understanding and some sadness. He had probably seen similar cases many times in his career. "Of course, Mrs. Elizabeth. I will prepare a draft for your review. Do you have in mind who you wish to leave your assets to?" I thought for a moment. I want to create a foundation to help elderly people abandoned by their families. The rest can go to local charities. When I returned to the St. Joseph's residence that afternoon, I felt like a completely different person from the one who had left that morning. I had a clear plan, infinite resources to execute it, and most importantly, I had regained my power to decide. I was no longer the helpless victim Christina imagined rotting in a nursing home. I was a woman with $16 million and a steely determination to get justice. That night, while the other residents slept, I stayed awake watching the moon through my window. In 2 more days, when all the money was in my accounts, the next phase of my plan would begin, and Christina would discover that underestimating her mother had been the most costly mistake of her life. Friday dawned with a bright sun that contrasted with the storm I was about to unleash on Christina's life. I woke up early, more rested than I had been in days. There was something comforting in knowing that I had absolute control of the situation, that every piece of the puzzle was falling into place exactly as I had planned. Today would be the day I would begin to execute my strategy with surgical precision. After breakfast, I called Michael from my room's phone. "Good morning, Mrs. Elizabeth. I have excellent news. The fund transfer was completed early this morning. The $300,000 are now available in your main account." I felt my heart skip a beat. It was real. It was all completely real. It was no longer a future promise. It was my tangible present. "Also," Michael continued, "I've already processed the revocation of your daughter's power of attorney. As of this moment, she has no legal access to any of your documents or accounts." I asked him to proceed immediately with the next step, contacting my bank to block all cards linked to my account except for my personal one. Michael assured me he would handle it personally within the next hour. We also discussed the strategy for selling my house. "I know an excellent and discreet real estate agent," he told me. "We can have the property on the market by this afternoon if you agree. Given the prime location, it shouldn't take long to find serious buyers." I gave him my full authorization. I wanted everything to move quickly before Christina could react or try any legal maneuvers. Michael explained that he would need to send a locksmith to change all the locks on the house that morning to prevent my daughter from continuing to enter freely and take my belongings. "I'll have the locksmith accompanied by a notary to document any resistance or incidents," he added with the efficiency I appreciated so much in him. Everything was in motion. Around 11 in the morning, while I was sitting in the residence's garden reading a book I had found in the small library, my cell phone started to ring. It was Christina. I smiled slightly before answering. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" Her voice sounded agitated, almost hysterical. "I just tried to use my card at the supermarket and it was declined. I called the bank and they told me the account is blocked." I kept my voice perfectly calm and neutral. "Oh yes, I decided to make some adjustments to my finances. You know, people living in nursing homes don't need credit cards, right? That's what you said yourself, that I wasn't capable of managing my own affairs." There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. I could imagine her processing my words, trying to understand what was happening. "Mom, this isn't funny. I have shopping to do, bills to pay. You can't just block my card like this." "Your card?" I repeated with emphasis. "Christina, that was never your card. It was an extension of my account that I paid for out of generosity. But since you've decided I'm an incapable old woman who should rot in a nursing home, I thought you wouldn't need my financial support anymore. Surely a grown, independent woman like you can manage her own expenses." I heard her take a deep breath, trying to control her fury. "Mom, don't be dramatic. This is ridiculous. I need that card." "What you need, Christina, is to learn to live on your own resources," I replied with a firmness that surprised me. "I worked ever since your father died to support us both. I sewed dresses until my fingers ached. I took any sewing job that came my way. I never expected anyone to support me. It's time you did the same." Before she could answer, I added, "Oh, and one more thing. I also revoked the power of attorney I gave you. You no longer have access to my documents nor authorization to act on my behalf." The scream that came from her throat was almost animal. "How dare you? Who do you think you are to do this?" The question was so absurd it almost made me laugh. I am Elizabeth Martinez, a 67-year-old woman who still has full mental and legal capacity to make her own decisions. I am the owner of my life, my property, and my money. And I will no longer allow anyone, not even my own daughter, to treat me like a disposable burden. And I hung up before she could continue screaming. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from pure adrenaline. I had spent decades avoiding confrontations with Christina, always giving in, always trying to keep the peace. But something had changed inside me. Maybe it was the cruel abandonment on my birthday. Maybe it was discovering the extent of her selfishness. Or maybe it was simply that I now had the resources to defend myself. Whatever the reason, I was no longer the submissive, accommodating mother she knew. Barely 20 minutes later, Christina called again. This time her voice had a different tone, more controlled, but with a threatening edge. "Mom, I just spoke with Jason. We tried to get into your house to keep organizing things for the sale, and the locks are changed. There's a paper on the door signed by a notary saying the property is under legal protection and that any unauthorized entry attempt will be considered trespassing." "What does all this mean?" "It means exactly what it says," I replied calmly. "It's my house. I bought it with your father 40 years ago. It's in my name, and no one is going to sell it except me when I decide to." Christina let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Mom, you're making a huge mistake. You need that house sold to pay for the nursing home. Or do you think that place is free? We were trying to help you organize your finances." The lie was so blatant, it genuinely outraged me. "Christina, stop pretending this has anything to do with my well-being. I know perfectly well that you and Jason plan to keep the money from the sale. I know you racked up debts counting on that inheritance, but I have news for you. That inheritance is never going to come." There was a long silence. "What do you mean?" she finally asked in a tense voice. "I mean, my plans have changed. You'll see." And I hung up again. That afternoon, Michael called me with updates. The real estate agent had already visited my house and taken professional photographs. The property would be listed on the market by Monday morning. "Given the value and location, I expect serious offers in less than a week," he explained. He also informed me that he had begun drafting my new will according to my instructions. "I'm including the creation of the Dorothy Foundation to help elderly people in situations of family abandonment. Are you sure you want to allocate 50% of your estate to this?" "Completely sure," I replied without wavering. My sister dedicated her life to building that fortune by working smart. I want her legacy to be helping people who are going through what I am, so that no one else has to feel abandoned and discarded by their own family. Michael was silent for a moment. "That's a very noble gesture, Mrs. Elizabeth. Your sister would be proud." His words moved me deeply. Dorothy really would be proud to see her money used for something so meaningful. Saturday passed with relative calm. Christina tried to call me 3 more times, but I ignored all her calls. There was nothing left to discuss with her. The decisions were made and the legal mechanisms were in motion. Instead, I received a text message from my grandson Luke asking if he could visit me on Sunday with Chloe. My heart filled with warmth. The children were not to blame for any of this. I replied that of course I would love to see them. That night, while eating dinner in the residence's dining room, Rose, the elderly lady who had spoken to me days before, sat next to me again. "You look different, Elizabeth. Stronger, more confident." I was surprised she noticed. "I guess I'm learning to stand up for myself," I answered honestly. She nodded wisely. "That's good. Too many of us spend our lives pleasing others and forgetting about ourselves. I did it for 50 years of marriage. When my husband died, I realized I didn't even know who I was without him." Her words resonated deeply with me. I too had spent decades defining myself by my roles. Anthony's wife, Christina's mother, Luke, and Chloe's grandmother. But who was Elizabeth Martinez beyond those labels? At 67, I was discovering aspects of myself I didn't even know existed, an inner strength that had lain dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken, and that moment was now. On Sunday morning, I got ready with special care for my grandchildren's visit. I put on a blue dress they had always liked and tied my hair in an elegant bun. Luke and Chloe arrived around 11, accompanied by Jason, who waited in the parking lot not daring to come inside. The children hugged me tightly, and I felt tears threatening to fall. I had missed them so much in these few days that felt like weeks. "Grandma, why are you here?" Chloe asked with her 12-year-old innocence. "Mom says you fell and need nurses, but you look fine." Luke, more perceptive at 15, looked at me with questioning eyes. I decided to be honest with them within reason for their age. "Your mother thought it would be better for me to be here, but the truth is I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. This is just temporary. Soon, I'll be living in a new, nice place." I told them about my plans to move to a smaller but cozy house with a garden where they could visit me. I didn't mention anything about the money or the conflict with their mother. That burden was not for them to carry. We spent 2 wonderful hours together, walking through the residence's gardens, Luke telling me about his last football game and Chloe about the book she was reading. When it was time to say goodbye, Chloe whispered in my ear, "I miss you, Grandma. Our house feels weird without you." After they left, I returned to my room with my heart torn between the joy of seeing them and the sadness of the situation. Christina was lying to them about everything, creating a false narrative where she was the concerned daughter and I was the sick mother who needed institutional care. But the children weren't stupid. They would eventually see the truth. I just hoped that when that happened, it wouldn't damage them too emotionally. That afternoon, I received a call from Michael that changed everything. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I have extraordinary news. A family saw the photos of your house this morning and wants to make an immediate offer. They are willing to pay $480,000 in cash, no financing, with a closing in less than 2 weeks." My breath quickened. "Is it a legitimate offer?" I asked incredulously. "Completely. I've already verified their financial capacity. They are a young couple with 2 children who have been looking for exactly that type of property in that area for months." I didn't hesitate for a second. "I accept the offer. Proceed with the sale immediately." Michael laughed softly. "I'm glad about your decision. I'll prepare all the documents for the signing. The family wants to move in as soon as possible, so if you agree, we could close the deal by next Friday." Friday. In less than a week, my house would be sold, the money in my account, and Christina would definitively lose what she considered her guaranteed inheritance. On Monday morning, as I anticipated, Christina showed up at the residence in a rage. The receptionist called me saying my daughter was in the lobby demanding to see me. I went downstairs calmly without rushing. When Christina saw me, her eyes were shooting sparks of anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Mom? I found out you put the house up for sale. When were you planning to tell me?" "I don't have to tell you anything, Christina. It's my house. I can sell it when I want and to whomever I want," I replied, looking her directly in the eyes. She took a step toward me, her voice rising in volume. "That house is our family history. I grew up there, Dad lived there. You can't just sell it to strangers." The hypocrisy was astonishing. "Christina, that house stopped being family history the moment you decided I should rot in a nursing home. It stopped being so when you started emptying it without my permission to take my things." Jason, who had entered behind her, tried to intervene with a conciliatory voice. "Elizabeth, let's be reasonable. If you need money to pay for this place, we can help you arrange it without selling the house. Maybe a loan or—" I cut him off with a raised hand. "I don't need your help, Jason. Not yours or Christina's. In fact, I'm perfectly fine financially. Better than you could ever imagine." The confusion on their faces was almost comical. "What are you talking about?" Christina asked suspiciously. I decided it was time to drop the first bomb. "I'm talking about the fact that your Aunt Dorothy left me a considerable inheritance when she passed away last month. An inheritance you knew nothing about." I watched the color drain from Christina's face. "How much?" she asked in a barely audible voice. I shrugged with feigned indifference. "Enough so that I never have to worry about money again for the rest of my life." The transformation on Christina's face was instant and predictable. The fury turned into something resembling panic. "Mom, I didn't know. If you had told me—" She began to stammer. "What would you have done differently? Christina, would you not have abandoned me in a nursing home on my birthday? Would you not have told me to rot in here? Tell me if you had known about the money. Would you have acted differently?" The silence that followed was more eloquent than any verbal response. "That's what I thought," I said with genuine sadness. "You only wanted me for what you could get from me. The house, the future inheritance, anything of material value. But me as a person, as your mother, meant nothing to you." Christina tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Mom, please, we can fix this. It was a mistake. I was stressed. Jason and I have financial problems and—" I stopped her again. "Your financial problems are not my responsibility. You are adults. Find a way to solve them yourselves." I turned to go back to my room, leaving them standing in the lobby. Behind me, I heard Christina start to cry, but my feet kept walking. For too many years, I had given in to her tears, to her emotional manipulations. No more. This time, Elizabeth Martinez was going to defend her dignity, no matter the cost. The days following my confrontation with Christina were a strange mix of inner peace and frantic activity. While she tried to process the revelation of my unexpected inheritance, I worked methodically with Michael to finalize all the legal details that would ensure my complete independence. On Tuesday morning, I signed the sale documents for my house before a notary. The buying family, Mr. and Mrs. Andrew and Patricia Morgan, with their 2 young children, seemed genuinely excited to acquire the property. Patricia, a young woman in her mid-30s with bright eyes, thanked me effusively. "Mrs. Elizabeth, this house is exactly what we've been looking for. We will raise our children here with lots of love." Her words comforted me in an unexpected way. At least my home would go to people who would value it, who would create new happy memories within those walls that had seen so many important moments of my life. I sincerely wished them all the happiness in the world. The $480,000 were transferred to my account that same day, added to the $16,300,000 from Dorothy's inheritance. I now possessed a total of $16,780,000, a figure so astronomical that I still had trouble fully comprehending it. But it wasn't the money itself that gave me satisfaction, but the freedom it represented, the ability to make decisions without depending on anyone, to live with dignity on my own terms. Christina, of course, did not stay idle after learning about my financial situation. The phone calls became incessant. She left 17 messages on my voicemail over the next 3 days. At first, they were angry messages accusing me of being selfish and vengeful. Then they changed to desperate pleas explaining that she and Jason owed $200,000 to various creditors. Finally, they transformed into attempts at emotional manipulation, reminding me that I was her only daughter, that the grandchildren needed me. But what really confirmed that I had made the right decisions was a message I received on Wednesday from an unknown number. It was from a private investigator hired by Christina to find out the exact magnitude of my inheritance. The investigator surprisingly contacted me directly to inform me what my daughter had asked him to investigate. "Mrs. Martinez, I thought you should know that your daughter hired me to investigate your bank movements. Out of professional ethics, I want you to be aware of this." I thanked him for his honesty and hung up, feeling a mixture of sadness and confirmation. Christina had reached the point of hiring investigators to spy on me to quantify exactly how much money I had and thus calculate how much she could get from me. It was the definitive proof that her intentions had never been genuine. She didn't care about my well-being or our relationship. She only cared about the money. That night, as I watched the moon from the window of my room at the residence, I made a final decision. There would be no turning back. On Thursday afternoon, Christina appeared at the St. Joseph's residence again, but this time with a completely different strategy. She arrived with a bouquet of expensive roses and a box of imported Swiss chocolates. Her face showed a studied expression of regret too perfect to be genuine. She found me in the garden reading under the shade of a tree. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked in a soft, almost childlike voice. I pointed to the bench next to me without saying anything. Christina sat down, leaving the gifts between us like peace offerings. "Mom, I've reflected a lot these past few days. You're right about everything. I behaved horribly towards you. I was selfish, cruel, and ungrateful. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway." The words sounded nice, well-rehearsed, but her eyes betrayed her. They were still calculating, measuring, looking for the right angle to manipulate me. "Christina, would you be here if I were really a poor old woman with no house and no money?" I asked directly, my voice calm but firm. She blinked, taken aback by the direct question. "Of course I would. You're my mother," she began, but I raised a hand, stopping her. "Don't lie to me anymore. Don't lie to yourself. We both know the answer. If I didn't have a single dollar, I would still be rotting in this nursing home without you caring in the slightest." I watched as her mask began to crack. Frustration was starting to seep through the facade of repentance. "Mom, Jason and I are in serious trouble. We owe $200,000. The banks are threatening to call in our debts. We lost your house, the cards are blocked. We have no way to get money. We just need a temporary loan. We'll pay you back everything." There it was, the real reason for her visit. She wasn't here to ask for forgiveness. She was here to ask for money. "How did you accumulate $200,000 in debt?" I asked, genuinely curious. Christina looked down, ashamed. "Personal loans, credit cards. A home equity loan we took out using your house as collateral 2 years ago when you gave me the power of attorney." My blood ran cold. "You used my house as collateral without consulting me." She nodded slightly. "We thought we would eventually inherit it anyway, so it didn't matter." The logic was so twisted, it left me speechless for a moment. They had mortgaged my assets, my home, counting on me to die soon, so they could inherit it and pay off their debts. They had planned my life and my death as if they were pieces on their personal financial game board. Christina listened to me very carefully. I said with an icy calm, "I am not going to give you a single dollar. Not now, not ever. You and Jason are responsible adults. If you accumulated irresponsible debts, you will have to find a way to pay them yourselves." Her face transformed instantly. The fake regret disappeared, replaced by pure rage. "You have $16 million, and you're not going to help your own daughter. What kind of mother are you?" she shouted, forgetting we were in a public garden where other residents were walking. "I'm the kind of mother who worked until her hands ached to give you an education and opportunities. I'm the kind of mother who sacrificed everything for you for 42 years. And I'm the kind of mother who is no longer going to let you manipulate and use her." Christina stood up abruptly, the roses falling to the ground. "This isn't going to end here. I have lawyers. I'm going to fight for what's mine. I'm your only heir." I looked at her from my seat, feeling strangely calm in the face of her threat. "You were my only heir. Past tense. Last week I signed a new will. 50% of my estate will go to the Dorothy Foundation, which I created to help elderly people abandoned by their families. The rest will be divided among charities. For you, there will only be a letter explaining why I made these decisions." The color drained from her face. "You can't do this to me." Her voice was barely a choked whisper. "I can, and I did. Michael, my lawyer, made sure everything is perfectly legal and irrevocable. Even if you try to fight it in court, which is your right, it will take you years, and you'll spend more on lawyers than you could possibly win. Well-drafted wills are very difficult to contest." I stood up too, looking her directly in the eyes. 42 years, Christina. For 42 years, I tolerated your selfishness, your demands, your lack of consideration, always justifying you, always forgiving you. But there are limits. Christina began to cry, real tears this time, mixed with genuine desperation. "Mom, please. They're going to foreclose on everything. Jason lost his job 6 months ago. We're living on savings that have already run out. We don't know what to do." For a moment, just a fleeting moment, I felt my resolve waver. She was my daughter after all. I had carried her. I had watched her take her first steps. But then I remembered her words on my birthday. "Rot in here, you miserable woman." I remembered the calculated cruelty with which she abandoned me. "You'll have to find jobs, Christina. Both of you. Work like normal people do when they have debts. Cut expenses, live modestly, pay little by little. It's what I did when your father died and we were left with no income. It's what millions of people do every day. It's not the end of the world. It just takes effort and humility." She shook her head, unable to accept that there would be no financial rescue. "You don't understand. It's too much money. We can't pay it off with normal salaries. Then you'll have to negotiate with your creditors, seek legal advice to restructure the debt, maybe declare bankruptcy if necessary. There are options, Christina, just none of them include my money." I picked up my book from the bench, ready to return to my room. "Mom, wait," she called out desperately. "There's something else you need to know. I'm pregnant. 3 months. You're going to be a grandmother again." She touched her belly in a protective gesture that seemed rehearsed. I stopped feeling something tighten in my chest. A baby. Another grandchild. But even as I processed the news, a part of me wondered about the very convenient timing of this pregnancy. "How long have you known?" I asked slowly. "For 2 weeks." She answered quickly. "We wanted to tell you sooner, but all this happened. 2 weeks." She knew after she put me in the nursing home. She knew, and still it didn't change her behavior or her cruel words. "Christina, if you are really pregnant, I'm happy for you and I hope the baby is born healthy. But that doesn't change anything between us. A baby is not a tool for manipulation, nor a ticket to get money. That child will need responsible parents who work to support him, not parents who live waiting for someone else's inheritance." I saw her open her mouth to protest, but I continued. "When that baby is born, if you and I have managed to rebuild a genuine relationship based on mutual respect and not on money, we can talk about how I can be present in his or her life as a grandmother. But first, you need to show me that you've really changed." I walked away, leaving her standing in the garden among the fallen roses and her tears. Every step felt heavy, but I knew that giving in now would invalidate everything I had built these last few days. It would be returning to the same destructive pattern where Christina did whatever she wanted and I just accepted and forgave without consequences. Not anymore. This time, there were clear lines that would not be crossed. That night, as I packed my suitcase to finally leave the St. Joseph's residence the next day, I reflected on everything that had happened. In just 10 days, my life had taken a 180-degree turn. I had gone from being an abandoned woman in a nursing home to becoming the mistress of my destiny with unlimited resources. I had gone from victim to the architect of my own justice. And most importantly, I had regained something I thought was lost forever: my dignity. Michael had found a perfect house for me in a gated community with 24-hour security. 3 spacious bedrooms, a bright living room, a modern kitchen, and a small but charming garden full of flowers. He had also hired Martha, a 50-year-old nurse with experience in elderly care, to live with me as a companion and assistant. Not because I really needed medical care, but because the company would be nice and it would give me peace of mind to have someone trained nearby just in case. On Friday morning, as the car Michael had sent waited for me at the residence entrance, I said goodbye to Rose and some other residents with whom I had shared these strange days. "Take care, Elizabeth," Rose said, hugging me tightly. "You are a brave woman. You inspired me to talk to my son about some things we needed to clear up." Her words filled me with warmth. If my experience had served to help at least one other person defend their own dignity, then something good had come out of all this. As the car pulled away from the St. Joseph's residence, I looked back at the building one last time through the rear window. I had only spent 10 days there, but it felt like months. 10 days that changed the entire course of my life. 10 days in which I learned that it's never too late to stand up for what's right, to set boundaries, to demand the respect one deserves. Christina had thought she was punishing me by leaving me there, but unknowingly, she had given me the push I needed to finally break free from emotional chains I had been dragging for decades. Now on the way to my new house, with my new life waiting for me, I felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Christina would really change, or if this rift would be permanent. I didn't know how Luke and Chloe would react when they were old enough to understand the whole truth. But what I did know with absolute certainty was that Elizabeth Martinez would never again be the submissive, accommodating woman who allowed herself to be walked all over. It was time to live for myself, finally. My new house in the Azaleas community was everything Michael had promised, and more. When the car passed through the security gates and drove down the tree-lined streets of the complex, I felt like I was truly starting a completely new chapter. The house, located on a quiet corner, had a white facade with blue shutters and a front garden where yellow roses and jasmine were blooming. It was modest compared to my old house, but it had something that one never had after Anthony's death. It was completely mine, with no painful memories attached to every wall. Martha was waiting for me at the entrance with a genuine and warm smile. She was a sturdy woman with brown hair tied back in a braid, with kind eyes that inspired immediate trust. "Mrs. Elizabeth, welcome home. I've prepared everything according to Mr. Michael's instructions. I hope you'll be comfortable here." We toured each room together. The master bedroom had large windows overlooking the garden. The second was already set up as a library with bookshelves waiting to be filled, and the third would be for Martha. The kitchen smelled like freshly baked bread. "I thought you might like something homemade for your first meal here," Martha explained, pointing to the table where a golden loaf was steaming next to a vegetable stew. The gesture moved me deeply. After days of eating institutional food at the nursing home, that homely aroma brought tears to my eyes. We had dinner together that night, talking about our lives. Martha had been a widow for 8 years, with no children, completely dedicated to her nursing career. "I like taking care of people," she told me simply. "It makes me feel useful." The first few weeks in my new home passed with a tranquility I hadn't experienced in years. We established simple but comforting routines. Breakfast in the garden when the weather allowed, walks through the neighborhood every afternoon, afternoons dedicated to reading and organizing the Dorothy Foundation with Michael. I didn't receive a single call from Christina during that time. It was as if she had completely disappeared from my life. And although part of me grieved for the absence of my daughter, another part was grateful for the peace that distance brought. Luke, however, started writing me letters. Beautiful, honest letters where he told me about his days, his worries, his dreams of becoming an architect someday. In one of them, written 3 weeks after I moved, he confessed, "Grandma, I know something happened between you and Mom. She doesn't want to talk about it, but I hear her crying at night. Dad is working 2 jobs now, and we hardly ever see him. Chloe asks about you constantly. I miss you a lot, too." Those words broke my heart. I decided to answer each of his letters with the same honesty he offered me, though adapted to what a 15-year-old could process. I explained that sometimes adults have serious disagreements that need time and space to resolve. I assured him that my love for him and for Chloe hadn't changed one bit, that none of what was happening was their fault. I promised him that when the time was right, we could see each other and talk calmly about everything. At the end of October, 2 months after moving into my new house, I received an unexpected call. It wasn't from Christina, but from Jason. His voice sounded tired, defeated even. "Elizabeth, I know I have no right to ask you for anything after everything. I just wanted to let you know that Christina gave birth last night, a baby girl. Both of them are fine." I felt my heart stop. My granddaughter had been born. A new life had come into the world, and I didn't even know the birth was imminent. "What's her name?" I managed to ask with a shaky voice. "We named her Elizabeth," Jason replied after a significant pause. "Christina insisted on the name. She says she wants the little girl to have her grandmother's strength." Tears began to roll down my cheeks uncontrollably. Naming the baby after me was a huge gesture, a message I couldn't ignore. "Can I visit them?" I asked, knowing I was risking my heart again. "Christina said she would like to see you," Jason admitted, "but she also understands if you decide not to." I asked for the hospital address and promised to go the next day. I could barely sleep that night. My mind was racing between the excitement of meeting my new granddaughter and the fear of facing Christina again. Would this be another manipulation? Was she using the baby as a tool to get closer to my money? But then I thought of that innocent little creature who bore my name, and I knew I couldn't let my problems with her mother stop me from meeting her. Babies deserve unconditional love, regardless of the circumstances of the adults around them. The next morning, Martha accompanied me to the hospital. I brought a bouquet of white daisies, Christina's favorite flowers when she was a child, although I wasn't sure if she still remembered. At the door of the room, chair 211. I stopped, taking a deep breath before knocking. "Come in." I heard Christina's voice from inside. I entered slowly, and the first thing I saw was my daughter in the hospital bed with disheveled hair and dark circles under her eyes, holding a small bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "Hi, Mom," Christina said softly. There was no trace of the anger or desperation from our last encounters. Just exhaustion and something that looked like genuine vulnerability. I approached the bed slowly, as if any sudden move could break this fragile moment. "Hi, honey. Congratulations." I looked at the bundle in her arms, and my heart melted completely. There, sleeping peacefully, was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. She had wisps of dark hair and rosy cheeks. "Do you want to hold her?" Christina offered. I nodded wordlessly, and with infinite care I took little Elizabeth in my arms. She was so light, so perfect, so completely helpless. I looked at her sleeping face and felt something move inside me, that inexplicable connection that only a grandmother can understand. "She's precious," I whispered, unable to look away from her. "She looks just like you when you were born. The same lips, the same little nose." We were silent for several minutes. Only the soft sound of the baby's breathing filled the room. Finally, Christina spoke, her voice hoarse with unshed tears. "Mom, these last 2 months have been the hardest of my life. Jason works 14 hours a day at 2 different jobs. I got a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic. I worked until the day before I gave birth. We sold the car. We moved into a tiny apartment. Creditors call us constantly. It's exhausting, humiliating, terrifying." I listened without interrupting, rocking gently with the baby in my arms. "But do you know what the worst part is?" Christina continued. "The worst part is realizing you were right. That I had lived my whole life expecting others to solve my problems. First you and Dad, then just you after he died. I never really grew up because there was always a safety net. I always knew that if I failed, Mom would be there to fix things." Tears were streaming freely down her face now. "When I put you in that nursing home, when I said those horrible words, I did it because in my head I had already reduced you to an obstacle between me and what I thought I deserved. I didn't see you as a person, as my mother who sacrificed everything for me. I saw you as a financial asset that I could liquidate. And that," her voice broke, "that is unforgivable. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand." I looked at my daughter. I really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in months. She had lost weight. She had new wrinkles around her eyes. Her hands showed signs of manual labor. This was no longer the spoiled, demanding Christina who had abandoned me on my birthday. Genuine suffering, forced responsibility, and motherhood had begun to transform her into someone different. But it was still too soon to know if that change would be permanent or just temporary while the hardships lasted. "Christina, I appreciate your words," I said, finally gently handing the baby back to her. "And I believe these months of difficulty have taught you valuable lessons. But forgiveness isn't something that's given overnight. Broken trust needs time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all." She nodded, accepting my words without protest. "I know. I didn't come to ask you for money or help Mom. I just wanted you to meet your granddaughter. I wanted you to know she has your name because I want her to grow up being strong like you." I asked about their plans for managing the debts. Christina explained that they had negotiated a 5-year payment plan with the creditors. It would be difficult but possible if they both kept their jobs and lived with extreme frugality. Jason had found a job as a manager at a warehouse, and she would return to the dental clinic after 6 weeks of maternity leave. "My mother-in-law will watch the baby while we work," she added. "We can't afford daycare yet." Before I left, I took an envelope from my purse that I had prepared that morning. "This is for little Elizabeth," I said, placing it on the table beside the bed. "Don't open it until I'm gone." Christina looked at me with questioning eyes but nodded. I said goodbye by kissing my granddaughter's soft forehead, and surprisingly, I also kissed Christina's forehead. "Take good care of yourselves. And Christina, I'm glad you're finally learning what it means to be responsible. Keep it up." In the car on the way back, Martha noticed my thoughtful expression. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Elizabeth?" she asked gently. "Confused," I admitted honestly. "I want to believe she's changed, but I'm afraid of falling back into the same patterns of being the mother who forgives everything without consequences." Martha nodded understandably. "Real change takes time. Months, even years. But it's also true that motherhood can transform people in unexpected ways. That baby might be exactly what your daughter needed to finally grow up. The envelope I left contained $10,000 and a note. The note said, "For little Elizabeth from her grandmother. This money is for the baby's medical emergencies only, not for paying debts or adult expenses. If I find out it was used for anything else, it will be the last help you ever receive from me. If you use it correctly, it will prove that you have really changed. The decision is yours." It was a test I knew, but I needed to see if Christina would respect the clear boundaries or try to manipulate them again. During the following weeks, I didn't receive any calls from Christina asking for more money or thanking me for the envelope. The silence was deafening, but also revealing. Either they were respecting my boundaries or they were too proud to contact me. Either option was better than the desperate manipulative pleas from before. Meanwhile, I continued to focus on the Dorothy Foundation. Michael and I had worked tirelessly to establish the foundation's statutes and goals. It would offer free legal advice to elderly people whose families tried to take advantage of them, provide financial support for verified cases of abandonment, and create educational programs on the rights of the elderly. The official launch was scheduled for December 2 months earlier than originally planned because the demand for cases was overwhelming. Elizabeth, there are 127 requests for help waiting for processing. Michael informed me during one of our meetings. Cases of children who stole their parents' pensions families, who abandoned elders in nursing homes without ever visiting situations of financial and emotional abuse. It's heartbreaking. Each case reminded me that my experience was not unique. Thousands of elderly people were facing similar or worse situations. The foundation could truly make a difference. One afternoon in November, I was in the garden pruning the roses when I heard the doorbell. Martha opened the door and moments later appeared with a surprised expression. "Mrs. Elizabeth, you have visitors. It's your grandchildren, Luke and Chloe." My heart leaped. The children were standing shyly in the entryway without their parents. "Grandma," Luke said in a shaky voice, "can we talk to you?" I hugged them tightly, feeling how much I had missed them these months. I took them to the garden, and Martha brought lemonade and cookies. "How did you get here?" I asked, worried. "We took 2 buses," Luke explained with teenage pride. "Mom doesn't know we came, but we needed to see you." Chloe at 12 took my hand. "Grandma, is it true that Mom did bad things to you?" We heard Mom and Dad arguing. Mom was crying, saying she had hurt you, and that you would never forgive her. I chose my words carefully. "Your mother and I had serious disagreements. She made mistakes that hurt me very much, but she is also working hard to change and be better." Family relationships are complicated, kids. They're not always black and white. Luke looked at me with his young but surprisingly mature eyes. "Are you going to forgive her someday?" The million-dollar question. Literally. "I don't know yet, Luke," I answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't automatic. Your mother needs to show with actions, not just words, that she has truly changed. And I need to heal from the wounds she caused me. Both of those things take time. Chloe rested her head on my shoulder. "We miss you so much, Grandma. The house feels empty without you, and the baby is really cute, but she cries all the time." I told them about my new life, about the foundation, about my future plans. Before they left, I gave them some money for a taxi back because I didn't want them traveling alone by bus. "You can visit me whenever you want," I assured them. "You will always be welcome here. You are not to blame for anything that happened between your mother and me. I love you unconditionally." I hugged them for a long time before watching them leave in the taxi. Their visit filled me with hope. No matter what happened with Christina, my relationship with my grandchildren could be saved. That night, surprisingly, I received a text message from Christina. "Mom, Luke and Chloe told me they came to visit you. Thank you for having them. Thank you for not speaking ill of me to them. And thank you for the money you left for the baby. It's still untouched. We will only use it if she needs it medically, just as you asked." It was a simple but significant message. It showed that at least in this regard, she was respecting the boundaries I had set. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. December arrived, bringing with it an unusual cold, and also the official launch of the Dorothy Foundation. The event was held in an elegant hall downtown with local authorities, representatives from charities, and the media present. I was nervous. I had never been one to seek public attention, but Michael insisted that my story could inspire other seniors to defend themselves from abusive situations. During my opening speech, I told my story without naming specific names. I talked about the abandonment on my birthday, about feeling discarded by my own family, but also about how my sister's unexpected inheritance gave me the tools to reclaim my dignity. This foundation exists so that no elderly person has to feel alone and helpless in the face of family abuse, I said with a firm voice, so that everyone knows they have rights, that they have value beyond their assets, and that it is never too late to demand respect. The response was overwhelming. Several elderly people in attendance approached me afterward with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of abandonment and mistreatment. An 80-year-old woman named Anne hugged me, saying, "Thank you for giving us a voice. For years I thought it was my fault that I had failed as a mother because my son treated me like a burden." I assured her it wasn't her fault that adult children are responsible for their own actions and decisions. What I didn't expect was to see Christina in the audience. She was standing at the back of the room, holding little Elizabeth wrapped in a knitted blanket. Our eyes met for a long, meaningful moment. She didn't approach, didn't try to speak to me during the event. She was just there, watching, listening to every word I said. When the ceremony ended and I began chatting with the attendees, I looked to where she had been, but she was already gone. That night, back at home, I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Christina. I opened it with trembling hands and began to read. "Mom, today I heard your speech and I finally understood the magnitude of the damage I caused you. I didn't just physically abandon you in a nursing home. I abandoned you emotionally long before that. For years I saw you as a provider of resources, not as a person with her own feelings and needs. The baby in my arms is teaching me what it means to love unconditionally, and that makes me realize how much you loved me just like that for my entire life, without me ever valuing it." The letter continued. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it yet. I just want you to know that Jason and I are still working hard. We've already paid off $30,000 of our debt in these 4 months. The $10,000 you left for the baby is still untouched. Little Elizabeth is healthy and strong. She hasn't needed any medical emergencies. But your gesture of conditional trust taught me something important. That trust is earned with consistent actions, not with empty promises. I hope one day I can earn yours back." I read and reread that letter for hours. There was something different in the tone, a genuine humility that I hadn't detected in our previous encounters. $30,000 paid in 4 months meant real sacrifice. With 2 jobs and a newborn baby that required iron discipline and very clear priorities. Maybe, just maybe, Christina was really changing, but my wounded heart still needed more time and more proof before it could fully open up again. Christmas was fast approaching. Luke and Chloe visited me every 2 weeks now, always with their parents' permission. They told me about their lives, their studies, their friends. Chloe confided in me that she wanted to be a writer someday, and I gave her a laptop so she could start writing her stories. Luke showed me his architectural drawings, impressive sketches of imaginary buildings, and I promised him that when it was time for college, the Dorothy Foundation would offer scholarships for talented young people. A week before Christmas, Christina called for the first time in months. Her voice sounded different, more mature. "Mom, I know you probably have plans for Christmas Eve, but I wanted to invite you to have dinner with us. It will be simple, just pasta and salad, because we can't afford more, but we would love to have you. The kids ask about you constantly, and little Elizabeth is smiling now. I'd like you to see that." The invitation took me completely by surprise. I spent several days deliberating whether to accept or not. I consulted with Martha, who wisely told me, "Mrs. Elizabeth, life is short. Justified grudges can protect us, but they can also isolate us. Your daughter is extending an olive branch. You decide if you want to accept it, but at least consider that the children deserve to see their family together on Christmas." She was right. Luke, Chloe, and little Elizabeth were not to blame for anything. They deserved to have their grandmother present on such a special date. On Christmas Eve, I arrived at Christina's modest apartment carrying gifts for everyone. The contrast with the spacious house where they had lived before was striking. It was a tiny space with second-hand furniture and thin walls, but it was clean and decorated with handmade Christmas ornaments. Jason greeted me with a shy, grateful hug. He looked tired, but there was a peace on his face that I didn't remember seeing before. Dinner was exactly as Christina had described: pasta with homemade tomato sauce and a simple salad. But the food didn't matter. What mattered was sitting around that small table with my grandchildren watching Chloe tell animated stories, Luke talk about his next football tournament, and little Elizabeth sleeping in her bassinet next to us. For a moment, just one moment, I felt that maybe the family could eventually heal. After dinner, while the children played in the other room, Christina and I were left alone in the kitchen washing dishes. We worked in silence for several minutes until she spoke. "Mom, these months have been the hardest, but also the most important of my life. Working 12 hours, coming home exhausted to take care of a baby, counting every dollar before spending it. It finally made me understand what you went through for years after Dad died, and I'm deeply ashamed for not having valued it before." I didn't answer immediately, just kept drying a plate. Finally, I said, "Regret is important, Christina, but what really matters is what you do with it. If this suffering transforms you into a better person, a better mother, then it will have been worth it. But if as soon as your financial situation improves, you go back to the same old patterns, then nothing will have really changed." She nodded, accepting the harshness of my words. "I know, and I promise you I will not go back to being that person." Before I left that night, I handed Christina an envelope. "This isn't money," I clarified, seeing her alarmed expression. "It's a letter of recommendation I prepared. One of the companies associated with the Dorothy Foundation is looking for an administrator. The salary is better than what you're earning now at the clinic. If you're interested, apply with this letter. But understand, this is not a favor. You will have to prove your competence just like any other candidate." Her eyes filled with tears as she took the envelope. "Thank you, Mom. Not just for this, but for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it." I looked at her with a mixture of cautious hope and motherly love that could never be completely extinguished. "We all deserve second chances, Christina, but not third or fourth ones. This is your opportunity to prove who you really want to be. Don't waste it." The following months brought gradual but constant changes. Christina got the administrator job, and her financial situation improved noticeably. With the better salary, they were able to accelerate the payment of their debts. She continued to visit me occasionally, always respectful of my boundaries, never asking for more than I was willing to give. Little Elizabeth grew fast and beautiful, and I visited her every 2 weeks to get to know her better. The Dorothy Foundation prospered beyond my most optimistic expectations. In 6 months, we had helped 183 elderly people in situations of abuse or family abandonment. Some cases ended in genuine reconciliations, others in necessary separations. The important thing was that each person received the legal and emotional support they needed to make informed decisions about their own lives. One spring afternoon, almost a year after my birthday in the nursing home, I was in my garden watching the azaleas bloom when Christina appeared with little Elizabeth. The baby was now 8 months old and starting to babble. "Mom, I have something to tell you. Jason and I finished paying off all our debts, the full $200,000. We are finally financially free." The pride in her voice was genuine. I hugged her, feeling genuine happiness for her achievement. "I'm so proud of you, dear. You showed a strength I didn't know you had." She hugged me back tightly. "I have it because I inherited it from you. It took me 67 years of your life and nearly losing your love to realize it. But I finally see it." We sat together in the garden, little Elizabeth crawling between us. And for the first time in over a year, I felt that maybe, just maybe, we had found our way back to each other. Not everything was perfectly resolved. Complete trust would take years to rebuild. But as I watched my daughter play with her baby in my garden, as I listened to her genuine laugh and saw the peace in her eyes, I knew I had made the right decisions. Setting boundaries, demanding respect, not giving in to manipulation. All of that not only saved me, but it also gave Christina the chance to finally become the woman she was destined to be. At 68 years old, I had learned the most important lessons of my life: that it's never too late to defend your dignity, that true love includes healthy boundaries, and that sometimes the greatest show of love is allowing the people we care about to face the consequences of their actions so they can grow. The story that began with abandonment and betrayal was finding its way toward redemption, not through easy forgiveness, but through hard work, mutual respect, and the determination of both of us to be better than we had been.